So we are continuing. Okay. Let's look at this part. We were saying GDP does not include the value of used goods that are resold. I told you earlier that any goods that are being resold will give us what? A double count. Do you get it? It will serve as what? A double count. Okay. A few years ago, Amma paid 500 Ghana cedi to put together. Please, I hope you are following because maybe you may need this question for revision or something. A few years ago, Amma paid 500 Ghana cedi to put together a record collection. Today, she sold her albums at a garage sale for 100 Ghana cedis. How much does this sale affect GDP? Okay. So she already paid to get it. Now she's trying to sell. So how much does it affect GDP? Of course, who can help us with this question? She paid to get this, and now she's selling at this price. Is it a loss or a gain? Or you consider it as a double count? From it, they want recorded videos. Guys, live sessions are far better than recorded videos. So it will be like, yes, it can be a double count, but if you look at you selling, you bought at 500 Ghana cedis, and then you want to sell at what? 100 Ghana cedis, which is a drop in what? The price of it. And even this 500 has already captured in the GDP. So you selling it again, when you were buying it, it was captured in GDP. Now you want to sell it again, which will also give us what? A double count. A farmer sells wheat to a baker for 2 Ghana cedis. The baker uses the wheat to make the bread, which is sold for 3 Ghana cedis. What is the total contribution of this transaction to GDP? I told you GDP, we only look at the final product, right? So its total contribution is what? 3 Ghana cedis per. Its total contribution is 3 Ghana cedis. Don't go and add this to this. This one is just an intermediate good. Like I told you earlier, that I want to produce something, but then I demanded for something first. Okay. Now let's look at this part, which is very critical. Components of what? GDP. Now the components of GDP are here. Let me go further and go down a little. Okay. These are the components of GDP. Now, anytime we want to look at GDP, we want to look at what we call C, which stands for consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. Okay. Now, I've scrolled up because I wanted you to get an overview of what consumption is. You know, consumption. When anytime you hear of consumption, look at only household, you. So if you want to calculate GDP, we look out for you as an individual, your part, and your part is being captured in what? Consumption. Now we look out for investment. Now investment can be by, let's say, a firm or an individual, but we normally look at the firm. So we look at the firm aspects or companies too. So consumption for individuals, investment for firms. Now we look out for government purchases or government spendings too. And we look out for the external part, which is the import and exports or our balance of payment. How much do we export? How much do we import? Then we can calculate that, okay, this is our country's what? GDP. Please, are you following? Kindly follow, because I know this part there is very, very good. Now, which part is the largest part of this part, of this GDP? Consumption. Consumption is the largest part of what? GDP. Anytime you hear of consumption, human being or we household, we are always, the population is very high. And human beings, almost every day, we spend goods and services. Because of that, it has what made GDP the largest part of what? Of the consumption, the largest part of GDP. Okay. Who is typing message? Me, you want to move you. So let's continue. So like I told you, the part that's being purchased by household, and we only look at the final product. Okay, the final product. So the final products are the final users or those who finally buy the product. We only look at that one. We don't look at those who go and handle. We don't look at those who help in the production. We don't look at the final good. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so when we want to, there are certain things that we can't touch, or yes, we can. There's things we can touch. So food, how much you spend on food, clothes, haircuts, concerts, and all that, they are being captured in GDP. So anything that you do that will add value, or anything that you spend money on, add value to what? GDP. And we have what's called the consumption. Some goods are being exempted from consumption. Are you with me? Please, are you following me? Some goods are being exempted from consumption. Okay. They are saying stocks. They are saying bonds. And they are saying land. Why? As for used goods, I've explained already. And purchase of new housing. Purchase of new houses like an investment. You see, when you purchase a new house, you're going to use it to what? Is that you are going to use, or we assume that we are going to give it out as a rent to other people. So if you're not captured in calculation of what? GDP. Okay, somebody's hand is up. Becca.
Barrister.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Barrister, please, I want to know, so what does GDP, what does it constitute? What's not part of GDP? I want to know that.
I barely hear you.
Huh?
I can't hear you well.
I said, what does not constitute GDP?
What does not?
Constitute GDP.
Now, can you type in there? I can't hear you. Type so that I can see it. So type in the chat box so that I can see it. Okay, let's continue. Some goods are, yes, so what does not constitute GDP? No, if you say what does not constitute GDP is too large, you are talking about consumption now. So you can say what is not part of consumption. Okay, yes. So here they are asking us some household buy, but not part of consumption. Anytime you buy new, please listen to me very, very well. Anytime you buy a new house, we assume that house is like a capital. You get it? We use our house to rent, can use house to factory. So what house like an intermediate good. Now, what you're going to use the house for is what to look out for. Did you use for rent? What is the return on the rent? Okay. Now, used goods, I've explained already that used goods, like when you include used goods, it will be like a double count. So used goods, like used phone, used iPhones, used shoes are not what's included, the calculation of what? GDP. The same way with stocks, bonds, and land, they are all like capital. They are all like capitals. Okay, so they are using production of when you buy bond, like yes, land. Land is like a capital that you can use to build a new house, or you can even start a factory on. You can even use for other things. So land is not so captured. Okay. This is part of consumption. I talked about this one earlier. Okay. Andy.
Please, so what of if you buy your house and you use it for something, will it be calculated?
Okay, so you're asking whether if you buy it for yourself. Okay, it's the housing. Okay, and we assume that it is capital. I understand you may be buying it for yourself. Yes, but you, what are you going to do about it? You're also going to live there for a very long time. Now you're looking at one thing, the time involved. When you cut your hair, how long does it take? When you want to build a house, of course, some housing can take like more than even 50 or 100 years. They will still be there. Okay, so it's a long-term thing that can be used more than just staying in. So it's not captured in GDP, but rather what it will be used for is what we include in the calculation of what GDP. Becca, your hand is still up.
Please, I was in the class. There was a question I wanted to ask
Okay, if you have,
about.
Mhm. I'm listening, Andy.
Yeah, you said things that are produced in the country
Okay,
are and it's like you said, things that are produced by our maybe citizens outside. Maybe they are from Ghana, but they are producing outside the country.
okay. So going forward, I'll tackle what you call GNP. GNP, we want to look at that we have Ghanaians outside the country, okay, who are also Ghanaians. Some of them, some of them also come and then they bring us money. Some of us, we have foreigners, we have our brothers who are outside the country, and sometimes they bring us money, right? I mean, from socket kakada socket to be 200 euros be pounds. So when you want to look at those foreigners or people or our nationals, if they are Ghanaians and they are living outside the country, working over there, they are not captured in GDP, right? They are captured in what you call GNP, what you call GNP. Are you following? So anytime you have any economy, of course, you have people who are going to travel outside. Please listen to me very well. You have people who are living outside. Now, those living outside, they are also Ghanaians. Now they are working. Okay, they are being considered as Ghanaians and they are Ghanaian citizens. If you want to calculate their contribution, because sometimes they also bring in, like I told you, let's say my brother is coming from UK, he brings a new laptop or a new car. Of course, it may be included in the calculation of what we call GNP, but not GDP. GDP, we want to look at the locality, okay, the local community itself without looking at any external parts. But anytime you want to consider those outside the economy, I repeat, those outside the economy, I mean outside the country or outside the boundaries of the country, we look at what we call GNP. We don't use the GDP. So GDP include whether you're a foreigner or you're not a foreigner. Once you're in Ghana, you are producing, we capture it. But GNP, we look out for those abroad. Okay, let's continue. So if you yourself, you work in the house that you're supposed to pay people, but you are able to do the work yourself. Like I told you earlier, maybe you clean your washroom or maybe you weed around. You could employ somebody to take care of the person, or you could employ somebody to weed around for you, but you decided to what? Do it yourself. Now those items are not included in the calculation of what? GDP, even though they are productive. It's caretaking part. If you take care of your own person, let's say Waoba, you give him birth and you're taking care of her. It's not included in the calculation of what GDP. But if you employ somebody such that you'll be paying the person, it becomes an income to the person, which is being calculated in the GDP. Somebody asked if renovation, where is renovation part of consumption? No, 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 no. Renovation is not part of consumption. If you want to renovate, okay.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
yes.
Please, I want to know if whether the fuel is part of GDP.
Fuel.
Yeah.
Yes, if you buy a fuel, it's being
Like,
captured in the calculation of GDP.
fuel, I think it's also used for other goods. So why is this captured?
Now, when apart from buying a fuel in your car, what do you use the fuel again? Of course, when you buy the fuel goes into your car, or you use it for something else. That I think when you buy the fuel, it just going it's just going to the your car streets. So it's not like an intermediate goods. Somebody's asking if the person volunteered. Well, volunteering is not captured in GDP. If you volunteer to take your parents taking care of you now is like a volunteer work. If you don't know, they can choose not to take care of you. It's a volunteering work that they're doing. So any volunteer work is not captured. It is not a market value. There's no cost involved or there's no payment involved. What if the person volunteered to be the caretaker? If you volunteer to be a caretaker, and if we are not paying you, it's not captured in GDP. But if we start paying you, of course, you'll be paying income tax, and then it will be like a revenue to you, or we say revenue, yes, to be like an income to you. So yes, to be captured in GDP. Incentives are not calculated. Please, ask him, why don't you unmute and talk? 1 minute. You are typing, why don't you unmute and talk so that if somebody is listening to the audio, they will know. If you are starting a new company at Bogatanga, you are leading us. So there's nothing consumption. It will come under investment. Okay. So let's go to, so anything that you buy with your money is part of what? Consumption. Now let's go to investment. Now, when you hear of investment, what comes into mind is what? Firms. Okay. Individuals also invest, but firms invest more than individuals. So anytime you hear of investment or private investment, what should come to mind is what? Firm. So we have capital. Capital, like we said, is a factor of production. Okay, good. So anytime a firm wants to expand its production, like here, please pay attention. Anytime a firm wants to expand its production, it is being captured in GDP. Anytime a firm wants to include or do a new home construction, it is being captured in GDP. Anytime a firm gets an inventory, it is being captured in GDP. Now I'm going to explain each of them very, very well. Please, when I was 1100, I go to lectures, I didn't understand this part. So please, I know most of you are confused when it comes to private investments. Private investment, you want to consider the companies who are working. Now, let me start with the inventory. Let's assume that I produce fruit juice. Okay, I'm a company. I produce fruit juice, and the fruit juice that I produce, please 1 minute.
Hey, hello.
Yes. So I was talking about inventory. Let's assume that you have a company. A company produces fruit juice. Now the fruit juice comes from what? Orange. They've sent 100 oranges into the market. And now at that particular year, they were able to produce only 80. Now, if you want to calculate GDP, we include the 20 that was left in the inventory, and we also include the 80 that was produced. So in all, we capture it as what? 100. Do you get it? Good. Anytime a business wants to expand its production, such as production of what? Plants. At first, the University of Ghana, there was nothing like Sakai. Okay. The need came for them to get Sakai. So that thing will be captured in the calculation of what the country's GDP because they have to pay for it. Sakai is a software. Okay. So anytime a company purchases a new product as part of its production to increase it, is being captured in the calculation of what? Is being captured as, yeah, it's being captured in the calculation of GDP. Sorry. Please, any question? You have a question, ask me before I continue. Okay. And I'm happy you all. Sakai is an intermediate good. Sakai is a software that's, so apart from Sakai, apart from it being a learning management system, what do we use it for? To facilitate learning. So when you learn, do you gain anything from it? I mean, when you learn, do you gain money from it or? So this software is not an intermediate. Okay. Okay, it's a final good. It's a final good because Sakai is where you go and what download everything, your resource material and all that. Yes. For sure.
Please, let's take for instance, I produce Bell Cola.
Okay.
And in 2021, I produced 50 Bell Colas, but
Okay.
I sold 25, leaving 25. So the remaining 25, will it be part of the GDP?
Yes. Even the remaining 25 becomes an inventory. It is being captured in the calculation of GDP. So next year, if you are calculating GDP, that remaining 25 that was left will not be included, else it will be a double count.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So are we all cool now? Any question? Any question? Williams, unmute and talk and stop sending messages.
No, exactly. No, exactly.
So no question. Okay. Like so is it Portia? The question you ask, changes in inventory. So anytime you change an inventory, okay, somebody's asking when we include, okay, it's very, very important. That's why I told you when I was in 100, I look out for goods that are being included in the calculation of GDP and goods that are being excluded in the calculation of GDP. So I told you goods that are not included in GDP are one, intermediate goods. So you can write them, intermediate goods. You can calculate, we have what you call the used goods that have been used already. We don't calculate, include them again. And then inventories that was captured last year. So if we captured an inventory last year, this year, those inventories are not included in the calculation of what? GDP. Okay. Okay, I think all these parts are.
I want to know how the counting is done.
The counting of the inventories or which counting?
For the GDP, how is the counting done?
Okay, so if you want to calculate for a GDP, we add up the consumption. So we look out for, that's why GDP, macroeconomic look at the aggregate level. So we go to, let's say the market. Actually, Ghana, we don't have a good database. But if you go to the foreign countries, they go to the supermarkets and they go to the shops. Okay, they're able to know that, okay, at this particular month, this was the total goods and services that people actually came to purchase. And that's from part of consumption. So by the close to the year, they know that, okay, this was a total consumption from each of them. Now, anytime a firm also wants to do something, we have a database that we have to channel through. So it's like the collection of these database that they put together That is why when you get to 200, you'll be doing what we call statistics, because anytime you are doing any, sorry, I think I was logged out. Okay. Sorry. Let's continue. Please, can you hear me? Somebody asked a question before I left. And getting to the afternoon, the network starts messing up. Sorry. So I was on the private investment or the investment. So yes, so you have to look out for items that are being included in the calculation of GDP and items that are what exempted in the calculation of GDP. Very, very important. So anytime government also invests, yes, Becca, your hand is up.
Sorry, sir, please. I want to know, are foreigners tax, like foreigners in this country,
Yes, if you're
are they
from
taxed or certificate?
yes, if you're foreigner, you're producing goods and services, it's captured in the calculation of GDP.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so inventories, I don't know, I've explained already. Okay, anytime an inventory increases, it's add up to GDP. If inventories falls, it also declines the GDP that we have in the country. Okay, now the investment, we have government side. Okay, if government wants to invest in, let's say, hospitals, schools, and all that, they are not captured in investment. That one is in under what we call government outlays. Is are you following? We have what we call government. We have some investments that are not part of investments, even though they are in the form of capital or they are used in production. Like when you build a university, it's like an investment, but it's not part of what private investment. We call it public investment, which is the same as what the government. Now, so we are going to enter into what we call the government purchases. Government also invest in what? In the economy. So anytime government purchase or anytime government constructs hospitals, anytime government builds roads or constructs roads, anytime government builds or put up schools, those items are also included in the calculation of what? GDP. Please, are we following? So anytime government wants to spend on students, like, how do you call it? Free SHS. Don't say because it's free, so it's not included in the calculation of GDP. It's being calculated. Okay, anything government spends, government building, government vehicles, government allowances, no, allowance are like transfer payments. Anything that government spends on the economy is being captured in the calculation of what? GDP. So here they are giving you some examples. Not only goods, but services performed by police, legislators, and military. They are all included in the calculation of what? GDP. Okay, so here, because I'm a transfer payment, of course, I'm sure most of you are familiar. Who has heard about LEAP, Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty? When the COVID-19 came, COVID-19 Relief Fund, they are all transfer payments. You don't work for it, but government is giving it to you. Government, because of one or two conditions, but those monies are not captured in the calculation of what? GDP. Apart from that, any other thing are being captured. So government outlays include government purchases plus what? Transfer payments. Okay. And government purchases include government investments and government consumption. If government wants to something like free SHS, I would say it's a consumption. Government investment may include something like building school, which is constructing roads. We can say it's a government investment. Okay. So here, like I told you, you have something like livelihood empowerment against poverty. Transfer payments is an example. Okay, transfer payments are not included in the calculation of GDP. Livelihood empowerment against poverty is a typical example. I think that one focuses much on children and women and the poor people who cannot really survive because of one or two conditions. Okay, so we have what you call exports, which is the foreign aspect. So we want to look at how much goods are being imported and how much goods are exported in the economy. Okay, so these are the components of what we call GDP. Then we have consumption, we have investment, we have government purchases, and we have net exports. Okay, so these are the four components, and we explain consumption, that this consumption normally capture what we call the household. This investment capture what we call the firms. We have government investment, but government investment doesn't come here. We have government itself. Government itself have government consumption. We have what we call government investment. So anytime the government wants to spend money on so many things because of disaster, because people need it, or on salaries and wages, it is called government consumption. But if the government wants to build roads, government wants to help people, such as constructing new hospitals in certain areas, it is called government investment. We have the foreign side. Okay, so all these are the components of what the GDP that you can have. Okay, please, any question? And we also learned goods that are not captured in the calculation of GDP. They are very, very important. Intermediate, transfer payments, what again? Used goods. Good, good. So I think we've done 2 lectures. Should we continue? Or you're tired?
Let's finish with the discussion at the.
Let's continue.
Okay, so please, any question? We have 3 minutes to end this video. So after this video ends, actually, I wanted us to do the component measurement of GDP too, but that one is very straightforward and very, very simple too. But I have to take your view whether you'll be available for it or not. So should we continue? I'm taking views. Should we continue or you are tired?
Let's continue.
Let's continue.
Okay, so in the absence of any question, then after this meeting ends, but then I want you to take your time and learn very, very well. This part will capture what you call it, your data response question in the final exams. Okay, to understand this part very well, goods that are captured in the calculation of GDP, goods that are not captured in the calculation of GDP, because going forward, they're going to give you a data response question and they're going to include transfer payments and they will tell you to calculate GDP. If you go and include it, you will get it wrong. They're going to give you a data response question and they will tell you, or they are going to include what you call used goods or even intermediate goods. Sometimes they won't say it's an intermediate good, but from your analysis and everything, you should know that, okay, this is an intermediate good. So I don't have to include it in the calculation of what? GDP. So our next meeting wouldn't last for even more than 15 minutes. Okay. Our next meeting, it won't last for more than 15 minutes. You finish very, very soon so that you can have the weekend for yourself and everything. So prepare yourself very well. Please, any question? Any question for me?
I think there's a case study. Let's tackle that.
Down there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, discussion question. What component of GDP would each of the following transactions affect? And how is GDP affected? Okay, so a household buys a new deep freezer. Okay, a household, is it a consumption or an investment?
Consumption.
Okay, consumption, good. Please, are you following? You buy banku and tilapia at lunch. Is it a consumption or investment?
Consumption.
Consumption.
Ghana repaves the Tamamoto Way. Which component does it fall under?
Expenditure.
Government expenditure.
Okay, government outlays
Expenditure.
or government purchases. Okay. Cane expands its cereal factory to Bogatanga.
Investment.
Investments.
Okay, so private investment. Okay. Your parents buy a bottle of Nigerian gin. Mm-hmm. The last one, Nigerian gin.
Net import.
I think it's not part.
Your parents buy a bottle of Nigerian gin. Okay, so I want to analyze this question. Your
Import.
Good.
Import.
Good. It's an import. Okay, it's an import. So
Why is it not consumption?
so why is not consumption?
Yes.
Because consumption here, you are talking about a Nigerian gin, and we didn't say that Nigerian gin in Ghana. And Ghana, we don't produce Nigerian gin. The Nigerian gin comes outside. It comes from outside.